Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to Read Becca for my weekly chatty catch-up on everything I've read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as some general lifey chit-chat. And it's been a whirlwind of a week, so let's dive right into the books. Starting with a debut novel that I enjoyed quite a bit, and that was September House by Carissa Orlando. I've had a hold for this since October. Not since September, since October. So it was a long wait, but I think it was well worth it. So September House kind of fits into that humorous horror vein that is a real growing subgenre right now, I think. And it was the right tone and time for me to enjoy this. This is so unusual because we're following Margaret, and in the prologue, she and her husband Hal are touring this house and just gushing over how absolutely wonderful this house is and how it's their dream house. It's perfect. And they are swept away by this house. But they're not picking up on the kind of subtle cues and ominous things the realtor is saying. Like the fact that there was a murder in this house in the past. But it's an old house, so of course Margaret is kind of like, well, it wouldn't be unusual for a very old house to not have that, wouldn't it? And that's very much the tone for the longest time. Margaret is willing to make concessions for this house, and it becomes very obvious as you are reading along that the house is an allegory for the body, for aging, and I think it's very successful at telling this story because as we dive into the beginning chapters, we start to hear about how in September things in the house are always a little challenging, and Hal is beginning to get fed up with it, certainly. He's less and less willing to accommodate it. And so we're hearing about the present while talking through the first couple years that have passed in the house since they moved there, and how they have come to learn to accept and live with what they have. And the tone is this dry humor that I think you must like in order to get along with this book. And it is very much my sort of humor, where we will have Margaret talking through the challenges of having a house that is not the friendliest, that, you know, it's just the way the house is, that sometimes blood drips down the walls in September, that the Frederica, the housekeeper, sometimes moves things around and doesn't put things really in the most understandable order. But you can't really fault it because they didn't hire her. She came with the house. And she also has a massive, massive hole in her head. So, obviously they have ghosts in the house, but they've learned the rules of this house and have learned to survive with it. But following along this story and to what I was saying about the allegory, I think this is so effective in showing us the way that as people age, they tend to lie to others about their situation, even just lies of convenience or lies to protect someone, especially adult children, where they're telling a lie to someone because they think that person will be scared or uncomfortable if they have to hear the truth. Things where they're lying to themselves even in the situation about what's going on and what they're dealing with. It also moves into the territory of talking about the ways over our lives we build up sort of an immunity to how bad things are, to how far things have degraded. And that verges into several topics, from things like chronic illness and actual physical aging, to things like dementia or Alzheimer's, as well as our relationships and the things that we learn to tolerate and put up with in relationships over time, from just simple unkindnesses all the way to outright abuse. And so I feel like all of those things were handled pretty well, honestly, but doing so many different things, trying to tackle all of those topics in one, made it feel a little bit muddled. So that was kind of the one drawback that I had with this, is it was over ambitious, I think, and needed to narrow its focus. It also did kind of go on too long. I thought it was almost over, and looked at the audiobook and realized I had 2 hours left, and I was very surprised, like what could even be happening for 2 more hours. So it did feel like it went on too long. But at no point did it feel like the plot was dragging. This is a pretty long book, but it was entertaining through the entirety. So I very much enjoyed this, and the fact that it's a debut is stellar. I think this is a truly unique book out there in the world of horror, and I just enjoyed it so much. I will say, at least initially, because of the tone, some of the gruesome elements were very much downplayed and not bothering me. But there is some really prolonged, extreme graphic violence as this goes on. So definitely don't go in expecting light and cute in terms of the violence level. It does get very, very graphic on page. So September House was a hit, and I can see why everyone has been really loving it. Then on to a romance. This is Triple Sec by TJ Alexander. This is a new release from the author of Chef's Kiss and Chef's Choice. I've known I wanted to read those, and of course instead of reading those, I picked this one off the library shelf because it's brand new. I also have a million holiday romances. Did I read them? No. So this was what I was feeling, and this is very obviously a throuple romance, or a polyamorous romance that turns into a throuple. So this is also very Epicurean themed. I knew I was going to love the chef elements of the author's other books, and this one is mostly drinks, but it definitely has food throughout as well. So Mel is having a really tough night at the high-end swanky bar that she tends, and in walks very hot, sexy, curvy, and empowered lawyer BB. And they start hitting it off and flirting really rapidly, or at least that's the vibe that Mel is getting. And then in comes her wife, Cade. Cade is non-binary, but is a wife. So they, them pronouns, but wife is their term of endearment. So Mel thinks she has the wrong vibe and ignores it, basically, sets it aside, but was invited to brunch by BB, who was very outgoing and seemed extremely friendly, at least. So Mel feels a little weird about it because of the initial vibe and agrees anyway to go to this brunch. And of course, BB is incredibly friendly at this brunch, and things go very, very well. They also talk about an upcoming food competition and encourage Mel that she should try to get into this drink competition at this upcoming event that she's never considered doing for herself. It's very expensive to enter, and so she hasn't really thought about it. So they put that in her mind, and also then invite her out to a private meal, just the two of them, because this was a group brunch sort of deal. So they're going out to a more private setting, and when they get together, naturally they open up that they're polyamorous, and they are looking for, or BB specifically is looking for something more serious. So Mel is completely caught off guard, and I love the progression of this from that point, because Mel has no idea about the polyamorous world, and she is very inexperienced. She basically married a woman out of high school and had no experience and is not over her divorce. She's not really moved forward in dating even, so she's super inexperienced, and now she's kind of feeling in over her head, but she's also very drawn to BB. And they set up these guidelines, these very written guidelines, and we actually get the guidelines written out through the book. And I love as their relationship progresses, we see those guidelines get rewritten and crossed out and updated. And I just really enjoyed that aspect of the communication progressing, where Cade and BB have such great communication because they have had to, because they're polyamorous, but Mel isn't quite there yet. And so I think that is maybe one of the sources of friction here. But because communication is so important, we don't have a standard miscommunication trope, I don't think. Almost, but not quite. Some of the conflict that happens here is much more external than from within. So I guess plot-wise, as I mentioned up front, this goes from a poly-triad situation into just a gentle transition to a throuple, because as they're getting to know each other, Cade increasingly feels more and more interested in Mel, and that really catches Mel off guard, because Cade is very like buttoned up and super cool and always reserved, I think. I don't often fan cast characters, but I immediately am thinking of Mason Alexander Park is exactly what Cade's personality is. So just very chic, very reserved, but whenever Cade talks, they're sort of extremely playful in a reserved way, if that makes any sense. And so like Cade I was into immediately, but Mel had her hackles up a bit about Cade. And really thought Cade didn't like her at all. And so she was completely caught off guard. And then they have this progression into, well, do we also want to date, or what does that mean for the three of us? So then working through the dynamics of this relationship was so fantastic and interesting. It's the first properly like throuple romance I've seen. And I very much enjoyed it. It wasn't like a new favorite. I would say this cover to me really implies it's going to be much more like smutty and a romp. And this wasn't that. This was really sweet and as I said, gentle in its progression. There are sex scenes in it, but pretty much on par with a standard contemporary. There were, I think, 2 or 3. And so I think this was much more a great exploration and progression of the characters and their relationship and them learning about themselves. Mel coming from that really naive place and developing as a person herself who is supported by romantic partners in her personal endeavors, and also someone who is growing in her romantic knowledge of herself, I think. So yeah, I very much enjoyed it, and I definitely do want to now go back and read TJ Alexander's other books, because this was a great time. As far as what I am reading now, I'm working on The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong on audiobook. I haven't decided what I'm going to pick up next in print books, but I have several books from the library that I really need to get to and get returned before like Christmas, I think, is around their due date. So we're getting down to deadlines where I can't renew them anymore. So I think that's all for books for today. Onward to other stuff. In watching, I of course just simply binged the new season of Queer Eye, season 9, and very much enjoyed it, as I always do. I think it was interesting. This season is in Vegas, and they did kind of go for a mix of very different types of people because of the unique setup of Vegas. We did actually get some kind of more high profile people. Yeah, it was very interesting. And I also really do love the person that replaced Bobby doing design work on the home design. I was very sad about Bobby leaving the show, though it was all fairly positive as far as I know. But Jeremiah, the replacement, is fantastic, and he was like, how is it always like this every time? So yeah, it was a good time. I also watched a number of movies. First, I watched Meet Me Next Christmas, which stars Christina Milian, and she is snowed in at the airport, gets access to the lounge, and meets a guy there who is like perfect, and they hit it off, but she has a boyfriend. And they have such a spark that they make this deal where she's obsessed with pentatonics, and so that becomes a whole big thing. Like, pentatonics themselves are in this movie and are very kind of ridiculous. But they agree that the two of them will meet up at next year's Pentatonics Christmas concert if they're single and still interested. So immediately after that Christmas, she and her boyfriend break up. And the next Christmas, she is determined that she needs to now go to this concert to see this guy, but it's sold out. So she runs around, can't get any tickets, and eventually finds her way to a concierge service. And the guy that she's paired with for this concierge service is not a very good concierge, it doesn't seem, but he is really making an effort for her. And it becomes quickly obvious that she is kind of ignoring him because she is going after her soulmate, but him and her clearly also have a connection. So it becomes a sort of love triangle thing where one leg of the triangle is not even present and is basically a stranger, which is interesting. But the progression of her and this concierge basically running around like crazy all over New York trying to get these tickets desperately and doing different things is a great time. It's very fun, very fast paced. And I think it started slow, but it got to that point where it was sort of self-aware and silly, leaning into being an over-the-top Christmas movie, though I don't think it pushed far enough into the silly. As it could have gone bigger in the silliness, I think. But it does get to things like a lot of cooking and a drag show, and that was a good time. So I think I enjoyed this one, but it wasn't a new favorite. It was just a good time to watch. Then I watched one that was fantastic, not a rom-com, but a just pure heartwarming Christmas film. Was Christmas on Cherry Lane. And this one you are following 3 families at different periods of time in the same house on Cherry Lane. And so you follow this progression that's really great. We have a young couple who have just bought the house and moved in literally the day before. They haven't even unpacked. And the entire extended family show up on their doorstep to stay with them. And they are super stressed out because the wife is pregnant and she is about to have her baby. She's like 2 weeks from being due. And so they are very, very stressed out trying to deal with the situation. And then jump forward, and I think that's 70s, and then the 90s, we have a woman who's about to retire and her adult kids coming to visit her in the house, and her kind of letting them know that she's going to be moving out of the house, and them feeling a lot of conflict over this situation. So both of those are very conflict-full stories. And then the third is kind of modern day, and we have 2 guys who it was so lovely because it really reminded me so strongly of Greg and Joel from Supposedly Fun. These 2 guys love Christmas, and one of them is a chef who absolutely has to cook in the kitchen for Christmas, and they're hosting people there, but they are having a home remodel on their kitchen done because they recently moved there. And the builder has been promising them it's going to be done in time, and it's just a few more hours the whole time, and they're increasingly freaking out. But they're also waiting to hear back about becoming foster dads, potentially, and it's something they have both dreamed of, especially at Christmas. So over the course of this, it just is a really lovely story. It is Hallmark, so it's got an appropriate level of cheese, I think. But it was very heartwarming, and I loved seeing it as, over time, of course, we see connections between the people in the house, the neighbors. That's really built, I think, into a lovely, lovely story. So I enjoyed that one much more than I was expecting, honestly. And then lastly, I went to the big hit recently, Wicked, and I was blown away. It was so, so, so good. I don't need to add to the chorus of people who've been singing its praises all over BookTube. Every single person I've seen talk about it has been like, yes, it's amazing, go see it. And so I had to make sure I got to see it in the theater, and I'm so glad I did. I've been to see the theater musical several times, and this was very on track with the musical production, but not limited in the scale of what you can fit onto a stage. So it got this just very grand scale and level of detail that is incredible. But yeah, I just had goosebumps from the beginning as the standard opening that you hear every time you go to the play started, and it started rolling, and it's the same scene exactly, but it's playing out in such an amazing, like, just incredible way that it blew me away. I really, really loved it. And I'm pretty sure they structured it so it is like the stage play where this is part 1 of a 2-part movie, and it stopped where the intermission is for the stage play. So yeah, I think they are doing a great job of adapting it, and I loved the performances. It was nice to see a great balance of several of the main roles being like big stars, but then having a lot of the cast be sort of unknowns and doing very, very well, I think, holding up. I also did enjoy that they found room to slide in Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth slightly. So getting to see them in the show just gave me a nice smile. Yeah, so I think that's it for all the stuff I watched this week. It's been a lot. And moving on, I think lifey stuff has been, as I said, whirlwind, just piles of stuff, literal and figurative. I think literal is the thing that's getting to me the most right now, because I have kind of a sequence of dominoes right now where one thing needs to happen in order for another thing to happen, in terms of my house continually getting messier right now. So like the first thing that needs to happen is finishing getting all my presents wrapped and sent off. I got the second to last grouping out, so I'm almost done with that. But like I have all of these boxes and stuff, literally a tower of boxes that I need to break down and recycle, but I can't do that because I may need them for wrapping stuff and shipping stuff. Anyway, this is all annoying minutia, but it's stuff like that, piles of stuff to donate still. Like I have been continuing with decluttering a lot, which has been great, but as of right now, it's just a continued explosion of stuff and I can't clean it up because I'm not done, because right now present stuff is blocking one of the areas that I need to clean. So yeah, so things are continually getting messier and messier in my house, and it's driving me mad. And it was pouring rain yesterday, so that kind of helped. It forced me to stay inside and do stuff, but it was not helpful for getting out to go to the stores and stuff that I needed to do. So, and I forgot, unfortunately, to get more brown paper to wrap my last package in because I was out. So that bums me out because now I have to go to the store an extra time before I can ship stuff out. So it is just that annoying, like one thing after another. But I think we're in the final stretch where I can just start knocking stuff off. I have a few more things to finish out in terms of duties, I guess, so responsibilities about Christmas stuff, but I am very much looking forward to next weekend being my Christmas celebrations and stuff. I have a couple things planned that I'm very much looking forward to, hanging out with friends, and yeah, it'll be a good time, I think. I'm quite sure there was something else that I was going to talk about here, and I don't remember, so we're just going to move on. Onward to recommendations for the week from videos. So first, I want to strongly recommend Aaron read a book. He's an omnivorous reader, and he did a video recommending books from 25 different genres because he reads so widely. So that was a great time. Lots of stuff that I have not heard of, as well as stuff that I absolutely have read and loved. So great mix there. And then 2 videos kind of on the same topic, but addressing different industries that really felt in conversation with each other. One was Willow Talks Books, discussing AI in the publishing industry and its impact there. I know there have been quite a few different people talking about that topic lately, but this was a great video, I think. And then the other is from the legal industry, from a channel called Legal Eagle that I follow, who does a lot of legal analysis, literally is a lawyer, very much into analyzing popular situations, mostly politics recently, but there's been a lot of other stuff that's gone on within the public sphere with famous people and stuff like that, or famous trials that they've done critical analysis on very well and super engaging. So if you're not aware of Legal Eagle and you like that kind of stuff, definitely check them out. But this was on AI's encroachment into law practice and what some kind of scammy companies are doing to introduce AI lawyers, basically. So I very much enjoyed that as well. As always, like, they have great content. So I think that's all for me today. Hopefully I think this has rambled on a little bit longer than I wanted. I was hoping to make this a quick one, but that's all for me today. I, as always, hope you're having a wonderful week, and thank you so very much for watching.